why do you think the philosophy of network effects is such an important one for humanity and society at large?
Each of the humans is a node. They abstract into clusters. They group into different size networks. Networks are shifting around. When you start analyzing the world that way, it helps you to really understand what's going on.
Network effects have accounted for approximately 70% of the value creation in tech.
Your product gets more valuable for every new user that uses the product.
Do you feel like we're in an AI bubble right now?
Yeah, we are, and I love bubbles. Every 20 years, it's very clear that we're about to have a cataclysm where nobody's employable anymore. I don't think it's wise to bet against capitalism. Hey, this is James Currier. I am one of the co-founders of NFX Capital, and you are listening to the Innovation Civilization podcast.
All right, James Currier, welcome to the ICP podcast. Glad to have you here today.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. So, James, I want to start off with a broad question, really. So, on this podcast, we like to talk about civilizationally important ideas. So, tell me directly, why do you think the idea or philosophy of network effects that you're such a big fan of is such an important one for humanity and society at large? Do you think?
Yeah, when you look at how to understand why the world is the way it is, one of the most powerful explicators is just network math. So each of the humans is a node. Each of them has a number of transfer functions. As data comes in, data comes out. They abstract into clusters. They group into different size networks, and the networks are shifting around. So when you start analyzing the world that way, it helps you to really understand what's going on. You come down to the primitives. So let's say transfer functions, but then inside the nodes could be around a mindset that you have. So for instance, in Spain, there's a mindset that the government should really help us get a job. And that mindset has now led to, 50% unemployment for people under 28 years old. Or you might decide that, you have to have guns to defend yourself against the government. That's just obvious in your mindset. So the transfer function is when you see somebody shooting up a school with guns, you're like, well, the problem isn't the gun because we know we need to have guns. And so each of us interacts with the world around us with our own mindsets, which are these primitives that exist in our mind in language. And then we collectively connect as networks, and then the world moves in those ways. And so
Okay.
I can't see the world anymore without noticing how the network math is affecting what we see in front.
Yeah, I was just kind of interested about, network effects. I was just kind of doing a bit of read up. So I think it was the Metcalfe's law in the 80s, where he basically talked about, the value of networks like n square, so n is a number of participants, and that square of that is basically the value, basically each idea sort of creates, right? So I guess this goes on to the notion of basically like as humans, we actually living by yourself and in like completely out of society is quite unnatural, right? So we are social creatures. We live in society, right? So the fact that network effects are embedded in everything we do is like a given, basically, right?
Yeah. And, you had Reed's law, which came after Metcalfe's law, which realized that there were clusters inside the networks that made them even stronger. And then, eventually we came up with the marketplace network effect law, which we called Currier's law, because no one had ever figured out what's the basic math around what makes a network effect strong in the marketplace. But after staring at it for about a decade, we sort of figured out what it was.
Yeah.
And so there are these ways of mathematically looking at our behaviors, and that becomes incredibly powerful toward understanding everything around us.
Yeah. So I was reading a bit on the NFX website. So there's this stat that you guys quote that over the past 23 years, network effects have accounted for approximately 70% of the value creation in tech. I was just kind of curious, can you explain that a little bit, and how do you kind of quantify the amount of value creation, so on and so forth?
Yeah. So what we did was we did a study over the course of a year with students at Stanford and whatnot, and we looked at all of the unicorns that had been created in tech. And then we looked at each of those businesses, and I think there was over 450 of these businesses that had gotten to be worth $1 billion at some point. And we analyzed them to see, do they have a network effect at their core? Now, a network effect is the idea that your product gets more valuable for every new user that uses the product. Okay, so adding a new node to your network makes the product more valuable for everyone who's already there. Things like Twitter, things like Facebook, things like Google, things like Amazon, These are network effect type businesses. And businesses that aren't network effect businesses are companies like Toyota or, Minds,
Yeah.
Scale Effect. So we analyzed all these companies and then we just said, okay, here are their valuations and here's whether they had a network effect at the core of the business or not. You just do the math on the spreadsheet. It comes up, what it came up to is about 72% of the value. And this was, I don't know, 6 years ago, uh, given to or was coming to Visa and things that have network effects. And yet we were only seeing maybe 20% of business plans that had network effects in the plan. So there's this mismatch between where value is being created and what founders were thinking of doing with their businesses.
Yeah. That's quite interesting,
I
actually.
suspect it's a
Yeah.
lot more than 72% now.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll come to that basically in how, since 6 years and how things have evolved. I mean, just on that Toyota example, though, even though it feels like it might not be a direct network effects because you're literally selling a car, but I'm just thinking about like complementary ideas and complementary products around it. So when I went to this emerging market country once, basically in South Asia, and I was talking to one of the car mechanics, and he was telling me, "Oh yeah, like if you buy a car, make sure that you buy a Toyota because the number of spare parts and mechanics who know Toyota is more available than, say, like another German car and so on and so forth, right? So that basically means more people end up buying Toyota because the network effects of mechanics and, just getting a car service is much easier and cheaper.
You're absolutely
So,
right.
yeah,
And we call that an expertise network effect, which is
I
if
see.
there are more people
Okay.
who know how to fix a Toyota than know how to fix a BMW, then
Yes.
your Toyota, in effect, has more value to you because it's easier to get and cheaper to get fixed.
Correct. Correct.
And that's our 16th network effects calls. But I didn't want
Yeah.
in our calculation of where the value is accruing, I did not want to label
Yeah.
what is mostly a scale business,
I see.
which is
Okay.
car manufacturing and railroads and whatnot. These are scale. Well,
That
railroads are.
makes sense. That makes sense, really. Just for the audience, so you guys actually sat down and found out there's like 16 different types of these network effects that you talked about?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, there's 17 now. We keep learning
17.
about them.
Of course,
When
yeah.
we originally published the article on all the different types of network effects, we had
Yeah.
13, and the name
Okay.
of it was 13 network effects and counting, because I knew we were going to
Yeah,
find them.
I
And
see.
the expertise one, which was 16th, actually came out of a discussion with Scott Cook, the CEO of Intuit. He's a real network
Okay.
effect wonk as well, just like I am. And so he came by the office and we brainstormed for a few hours. And he kept telling me about how his business functioned and
Yeah.
what we realized is there was this thing. The more people who know how to use QuickBooks,
Yeah.
the more likely is small businesses to use QuickBooks because it's easier to
Hmm.
find someone who knows how to use it.
Hmm. So I wanted to ask you more kind of related but broader questions about network effects, right? But so, in society, how it works is that because humans are social beings, right? And we sort of mimic each other, right? The Henry Girard sort of idea. So even if a product does not have inherent network effects, if I use Apple or if I use a certain product and I have, let's say, some kind of social capital within society, people see that and they just want to follow me, right? So in a way, they're just copying and mimicking. Is that also network effects or is that just like
A great
normal?
question. And if you
Yeah.
if you go to nfx.com and you look at the network effects map, okay, so we
Yeah.
actually lay out a map of the defensibilities in the digital age, and there's four of
Okay.
them. Network
Okay.
effects is the greatest of them. There's embedding, something like Oracle embeds into your company, you can't rip it out. There's scale, which is, Walmart and Toyota. And then there's brand. And people just get used to using something and they just keep doing it. So, like Hertz is number one. So we just keep using. And when Avis was number two, they said, we try harder. When they got to be number one, because that campaign was so successful, they then said, we're number one. And they dropped to number three because the people couldn't calculate the brand in my mind is that Hertz is number one. So there is this brand effect. So so if you look at the network effects map, you get out toward language and belief and things that are quite weak. But beyond that is where brand is what you're talking about. We think that there is more value to you in using an Apple because people think you're cooler,
Yeah.
but that's not the same thing. At some point, we have to draw the line
Yes.
where we say this is so the outer ring of the network effects things are all psychological and branding
Correct.
is psychological, but
I
it's
see.
just It's not physical. So the core of the network effects map, the strongest network effect is something like Comcast. They laid the cables, comes to your house. Nobody else is going to lay all those darn cables. So they can charge you whatever you want. I think Comcast has the lowest NPS score of any company in America, and they can afford to because they have the strongest network effect.
Yeah.
No one can leave them.
Yeah.
So then you get out to the psychological types of network effects, and then you merge into what I call brand.
I see. I see. And I guess the telephone lines are also an example of network effects, right? Early network effects. Yeah. Yeah.
Telephone lines and Comcast, yep.
And then Comcast as well. And I guess early
And railroads.
internet.
And railroads. Like how many railroad tracks are you going to build into a
Right.
town? I don't want to
Any,
use Southern Pacific. No, you have to.
okay.
They own the railroads. And
Okay.
that's why they separated anyway, that's why the government eventually separated the rail from the
Yeah.
companies riding on top
So
of
that's
it.
quite interesting, James. So it seems like you sort of oriented your life around network effects, right? I'm quite curious to know, and I'm sure the audience is as well. How did you get like inoculated with this idea in the first place? And what was the moment where you sort of realized, holy cow, like this is such a game changer, and you just became obsessed ever since?
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was 2004. So I was a little bit late to the game, but we had started a business. It was called Tickle, and we had to keep producing new pieces of content. We were doing a self-assessment testing business, and we had to keep producing 1 or 2 new tests every week to keep the traffic up. We call that the fresh produce business, and all media companies like Netflix are kind of in that business, and Disney's in that business, etc. And we were feeling like we were working our asses off, and we were kind of running up a sandhill. Now we were growing, and it went from 3 million to 8 million to 16 million to 32 million. It was going, but it was through a lot of work. So then we started to experiment with matchmaking, and we noticed that people would pay us for like 3.5 months on that.
Mm,
And then we started experimenting with social networks. Now matchmaking and social networking have network effects, but I didn't know that at the time. Eventually we sold the company in 2004. But our instincts were to go toward things that people would just come back to even when we were sleeping, and we wouldn't have to produce another piece of content to get them to come back. So instinctively, we were trying to move it toward a network type of a topology or a business product, or a product. We get bought in 2004 by Monster.com, which has a two-sided network effect between employers and employees. 40,000 people a day put their resumes in, and all these employers come to try to hire them. And once everyone was there, it became a very efficient market. And the employers just wouldn't leave. The employees would keep coming. So we get acquired by them. They're horribly run. We have, 3 of our engineers could have done what 600 of their engineers are doing, literally. I mean, it was that
wow.
bad difference, but they had like Eastern European groups, and it was so badly run, and they had a $7 billion market cap.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed unfair that they were worth $7 billion and they were acquiring us for like 110, and they were horribly run, and we were great at what we were doing. And once I got there, I realized that they were only working 4 or 5 hours a day because they had a network effect. It's like Comcast. They don't have to actually do that much once you get the network effect. And I said, everything I do going forward, I want to have something like this where when I go to sleep at night, I wake up in the morning, the company's bigger and more value is being created for people without me actually adding the value. The system itself creates the value. And that was the big aha.
Wow. That's good. That's quite interesting.
Then I became a student of it, and it turns out that they had a two-sided marketplace network effect, but that there's all these other types of network effects that you can use to, put into your company. And if you look at an Uber or Facebook, they have multiple network effects and multiple defensibilities with brand and with scale and with embedding. They're using all these different pieces. In fact, there's some good articles on NFX.com about Uber and Facebook that people could look up where videos, and it walks you through how the businesses started. They got a network effect at the beginning, and then they reinforced. Over time, they would add more and more ways that they were more and more defensible. And you can really map it out.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, actually. So if I understand, so Tickle as well as Monster and others, would you say they're more like in the social media kind of space, right? Consumer space, consumer social, so on and so forth. I heard a talk you gave 11 years ago at LE Web where you talked about network effects within social media, but how you expect to see in the next decade network effects play out in enterprise too, and other industries and so on and so forth. So just with the hindsight basically that we have now, do you think that has sort of come to fruition? Do you see more examples of network effects in lesser kind of consumer social stuff and more the harder stuff, basically, enterprise and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So what you start seeing is things like Salesforce
Mm,
launching Force, which is
mm,
what we call a two-sided platform network effect. And it's like a Microsoft operating system or an iOS where they created a layer on top of Salesforce so that anybody could build apps that would then be able to access the data in the database of record. So they got an embedding effect for the first 10 years, and then they launched, and I think they're worth 18 billion. And then they launched Force, and they had tens of thousands of companies building software that would benefit their customers. So Salesforce goes to sleep at night. When they wake up, somebody else has built two or three businesses on top of Salesforce to get access through them to their customers. And now Salesforce is more valuable to their customers, and they didn't do anything for it. And so that's what we call a platform network effect. And so we're seeing that one very regularly in B2B. That's one of the
mm.
most.
Yeah, yeah, that's quite interesting actually. And so for your fund, then, are you guys only investing in stuff which has network effects exclusively, or are you a bit more wide varied? Yeah,
We invest in things that don't have network effects, but in most of the companies we invest in, we believe we can help them build network effects. We believe we can
I see.
change the product, the way they market the product, which customers they get first, and how those customers interact with other
Yeah,
people, other nodes on the network. And we help them reconstitute the product to have a network effect so that they can be worth 4 or 10 million, not just 400 million.
yeah. I want to ask a question, and often we are so obsessed with, like successes, basically, that we don't look at, some of the failures that happen as well, right? Is there, from your experience, a company that you worked with or invested in before where you thought that network effects could be embedded in that, but it was just so hard that, it didn't end up happening, or it just kind of failed, basically? Any lessons from that? Anything that comes to mind from those
Yeah,
experiences?
I made a bad investment once in a electric scooter company. We thought, look, electric scooters have like 6% penetration in Europe and 9% in Asia and nearly zero in the US. If we can build out a network of charging stations and battery swaps
Hmm.
and a community of people who could then share, like an Uber, like you could actually rent out these things like an Uber, and so I could buy one and use it 20% of the time and then rent it out the other 80% of the time. We thought we could build something like that, and it just proved too difficult with the atoms. It proved too difficult with people, that never came to fruition.
That's quite interesting, actually. I mean, I live in London, and I see like so many of these scooter companies, actually. It's almost like too many of them. I don't know like what the profitability metrics looks like for each of these companies, but it seems like it's all VC subsidized growth, basically. That's what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that will be true for most of the companies in that space, and I think there'll be a few that break through, a little bit like DoorDash, right? I mean,
yeah,
there was 5 DoorDashes when I was looking at the space, and the other 4 just disappeared. And in fact, DoorDash didn't look like it was going to work even 4 to 5 years in until they got enough scale and enough money so that they saw areas, enough experiments in place where they saw places where they could make a real
yeah,
business.
yeah. That makes sense, actually. And what does the idea of winner takes all have to do with network effects? Is it always that within network effect related stuff, the winner takes the whole pie, or what do you
It
think?
turns out that's no, it's not true.
Okay,
Typically, in
okay,
most markets, it's not true.
okay.
For Google, seems to be true. For Facebook, it's largely true, but that's only because they acquired WhatsApp and
Right.
and
Yeah.
Instagram, and they were unable to acquire Snap before it got out the door. They didn't acquire Discord yet. I mean, the, so no, it's not typically true. It's just a buzzy, a hot take about urgency and, oh wow, isn't business cool? And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense, really. Yeah. No, I thought about that as well. And that sort of makes sense. So I guess let's come to 2025 or today, right? So, I mean, obviously, there's the new buzzword and feels like quite bubbly in the world of AI and LLMs right now, right? So, how are you thinking about network effects and AI, and what do you think the recent AI revolution that we're going, the post LLM, is affecting network effects, and yeah, how are you thinking about this space basically of generally?
Yeah. So when we originally saw about 8 years ago that there were really only four defensibilities left in the digital world, now that the world's becoming digital, we lost the ability to have patents really, or
Correct.
or I own the mine, so whatever, I own the rail in the digital world. So we had lost about 10 different defensibilities, but we were down to four.
What were those four that were remaining?
Well, the ones I mentioned earlier: network
Yeah.
effects, embedding, scale, and brand.
Okay. Okay.
And there's article on NFX.com
Mm-hmm.
about defensibility. Just type in NFX defensibility on Google and you can get the article.
Yeah.
It lays it all out, and it lays out the four defensibilities and then like the eight competitive advantages. So raising a ton of money is a competitive advantage, no doubt about it. But eventually somebody else could raise more, or it runs out. The money you burn through the money. Now that AI has come, it might be that we go from four defensibilities down to maybe one or two. Like it might get worse. The world might just get less and less capable of
Mm-hmm.
allowing defensibilities as things become more like water.
Mm-hmm.
2.5 years into to watching people build businesses and investing in AI. I mean, we were investing in AI for 8 years before this, but it seems like the four are still in because AI is essentially software.
Mm-hmm.
And so the four remain. It's still those four defensibilities. So we continue to look for network effects, and we continue to look for embedding, and we continue to think about, again, those Uber and Facebook articles let you see how you paint the picture between all the different ways of getting defensible. Jasper could have figured out how to become
Mm-hmm.
defensible, but they didn't think that way. They were so happy with how things were going that they just kept going. And now I haven't heard from them in 18 months. I don't know what happened after they got their unicorn status.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
quite
it's
interesting, actually.
how you
Uh,
drive the bus. It's how you fly the plane,
yeah.
and how you think about strategically how you change your product in order to make it defensible.
Yeah. I just wonder, like, with this AI generated content, as well as the multi agent sort of future, basically, where agents are talking to each other and in a multi agent economy, what a network effects looks like in that stage, and then I guess B, what does defensibility look like, and so forth. I guess you're already seeing some protocols like MCP and others, right, which are sort of network effects. You can say so, right? And
Those
I
are
think,
it's
yeah,
actually the third ring. The third ring.
the third ring, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right. And I think like OpenAI tried to do this where they're try to like have like a play store basically, right, of agents and so on and so forth. So they were trying that kind of context. I'm not
They
sure how
were trying the
successful it
platform
is.
network effect. That
Yeah.
was the first one they tried. Yep.
Yes, exactly. Right. So you do have these initiatives taken at a product level, right? To include network effects
Yeah.
in
And
AI.
their most recent attempt is an embedding attempt where they're trying to get you to spend time on ChatGPT so that they have enough data on you so that your experience
Correct.
there
The
will be
memory.
differentiated. So the memory
Yeah.
thing we launched a month ago,
Yeah.
that's actually an embedding effect,
Yeah.
which is you, they want to become the database of record for the corporation of you.
Yeah. 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 And that's it's quite powerful, I would say. It's been quite useful, at least for me. It's also scary for have so much information for about myself, for a company, but definitely.
But it's scary to be dependent on Oracle and on Salesforce as well,
Yeah.
because there's not much you can do.
Yeah, yeah, 100% really. So, do you feel like we're kind of like in an AI bubble right now? What's your sort of take?
Yeah, we are, and I love bubbles.
Okay, tell me
Right? I
more.
mean, this is
Yeah.
what this is the mental model. Remember, I told you transfer functions and like the
Yes.
mindset.
Yes.
What most people don't understand is that bubbles are fantastic.
Okay.
Drinking the Kool-Aid is great. It's just like
Okay.
the East Coast mentality of policemen, which is don't let anything bad happen. Are people going to lose money? I'm like, yeah, people are going to lose a lot of money, but it's okay because we're going to make a lot of money because it's not a zero-sum game, guys.
I
We're
see.
just building
Okay.
more and more. So yes, we're in a bubble, and yes, it's fantastic. It's like all
Mm-hmm.
these crazy ideas are going to get funded. Most of them won't work,
Mm-hmm.
but some of them will work really big, and that'll
Yeah.
pay for the rest of them.
Yeah.
And the whole ecosystem, all these venture capitalists. Look, there was 150 general partners in 1994, and now there's 32,000.
Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah.
Huge strategic advantage for the United States
Mm.
because we have all these people like me running around giving money to crazy ideas, and very, very few of them are going to get big, but the ones that do will really move the needle.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a bubble, and people are paying incredible prices. Some of these multi-stage funds with multi-billion-dollar funds are just way overpaying. But in
Yeah.
the end, for the ones that work, they'll look back and say, I was not overpaying.
Yeah. Yeah. That's quite interesting. And how are you guys approaching the AI thesis at NFX basically? Is it like, do you have a specific thesis for this, or which companies you're backing and so on and so forth? Or,
So we were very early. Sequoia and NFX were the first to sort of start really reporting on what was going
mm,
on with this whole AI thing.
mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we've had a thesis about the 5-layer stack within AI, about the
Mm,
different categories. We've mapped it all out. We've laid it all out. We've been thinking about it for a long time and writing about it a long time. We've written a lot about
yeah.
agents and how it work. And our thesis is to understand how it's moving on a daily basis and on a weekly basis, and then receive the best ideas and the best talent from the founders. It's not our job to say, "Oh, we're going to incubate this company." It's not our
Mm,
job to say, "This is what someone should do," because you have to make 4 decisions before lunch, 4 decisions before dinner every day for a year before you've got anything anyway, particularly in such a fast moving space as AI. So, we're investing in pretty much every layer of the stack and in an industry that seems interesting.
yeah. That makes sense, really. And
I think we are the largest, or one of the largest, seed funds in the world. We've got 11, investment professionals and
yeah,
another 30 helping us, and we look at 10 to 15,000 companies per year. So we're
yeah.
kind of investing very broadly.
And what do you feel about the moats when it comes to some of these AI companies, right? I mean, just by saying like there's so many large language models right now, right? And there's this even idea that these big LLM kind of companies, are they even going to be profitable in the long run, right? There's also other app layers and other things really. So what's your sort of take on, defensibility there in general, and where the best companies are going to be?
So where
Yeah.
we are right now is where we were 3 years ago when we published about this, that the
Mm.
LLMs are going to be water. It's going to run on your CPU on
Yes.
your phone.
Yeah.
That's not where you're going to get the revenue. It's not
Okay.
defensible. It's commodified. Uh, just like Jasper was a commodity, and they did not take action to move up the stack or to create a platform or to build a network effect at the application layer. There's all sorts of stuff they could have done strategically that they didn't do. The question has been, will OpenAI do that or not? Will Anthropic do that or not? Or will they employ embedding techniques? Like Anthropic will say, your data is only safe with us, General Motors, so let's pay us a big fee. We'll protect you. There might be embedding strategy there. And what OpenAI has done just in the last month with their memory embedding approach is they're starting to show some signs that they are thinking about how to become more defensible over time. Uh, they are working very much on their brand, obviously. So they're playing around with the different things that could make them defensible.
Yeah.
Just in the last, I don't know, 6 months. So it's likely that they will be able to pull it off because they're
Yeah.
so big with that $40 billion infusion,
Yeah.
and so it could be an absolutely monster company. But it won't be because of the LLM.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense, really. And what do you think about this, the app layer of the GPT wrappers, quote unquote? I mean, people were poo-pooing those like maybe a year ago, 6 months ago, and now all of a sudden, they're sort of glorifying some of these. But what's your take on? Oh, you're just a GPT wrapper.
It's fine to be a rapper as long as you have. Uh, the reason people say rappers are bad is because they say there's no defensibility. So I say,
Yeah.
as long as a rapper has defensibility, then it could be a great business,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if you have
Yeah.
embedded in your strategy or in your product, or if you have network effects in your strategy,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. That makes sense, really.
Your application layer is where you can build those things, and you just have to think about it. You can't just wrap it and say, I'm growing, I'm doubling every month, so I'm good. No, you're not
Yeah.
good. You
Yeah.
have to see through that growth toward what's really going to be defensible in the third and the fifth and the eighth inning.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense, really. Just relate to AI. So one of the things that you guys put out was something about the 3-person unicorn startup, and how you can achieve much more with less, basically, right? So are you saying that we're going to move from this concept of like, I guess, the Fortune 500 company to the Fortune 5 million, because there's going to be so many more companies created by one or two or three people versus these big companies, So is that the thesis here, or?
I think the thesis is more that um, if you start AI first,
Hmm.
you can do so much more than you can if you're not AI first, that it'll just be the operations of your business and the way you think about what you do during the day will just be very, very different. Changing the mindsets of people who work in the Fortune 500 probably won't happen. It's going to be very hard for them to shift their mindset toward how much can get done with AI. So the new big companies are going to have to be AI first, number one, and number two, you can just do it with a lot fewer people. Now, hopefully, what that means is that the whole economy just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, faster and faster, because we're adding so much value to each other in various ways.
Yeah.
That's the hope.
Yeah. Yeah. It was quite interesting because I talked to two people who work in normal jobs at one of these Fortune 500 companies, right? And both of them were saying how their bosses have basically told them, hey, we want to achieve more using AI. So only hire basically if you don't think you can use AI tools for this, So they're like actively thinking about downsizing and how to achieve more using AI, So that was quite an interesting sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we know companies that used to have 900 call center people and now they have 50.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's happening. It's starting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's going to be a lot of change. And you think about change, it can be painful because you're worried, you don't know what's happening next. There's going to be a lot of pain. There's going to be a lot of confusion, a lot of worry, a lot of hand wringing. But
Yeah.
if you look at the loss of the steel industry in Pittsburgh, that city
Hmm.
died. And people moved in, people moved out, people lost their jobs, people had to get retrained. And it took 15 years, but Pittsburgh's beautiful now. And they found all sorts of new industries and real estate and insurance and manufacturing and all these other things that they're doing in Pittsburgh that aren't steel. It's a fantastic city. So we can have rebirth as long as we adapt to the new technologies. And we're all going to have to go through a lot of change. Hell, what do venture capitalists do in 10 or 12 years?
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you that question. Like, what do you think is going to be different? This is the whole venture model, right? The 220 and other things that you have for a fund. Do you think that's going to be materially different with this whole kind of AI and how companies are being built right now?
I think it will be. I think it will be. I think the venture market is getting more and more efficient. There's more, like I said, there's 32,000 people out there deploying capital into private tech firms now. So the prices are going up. So the returns are going to have to go down a little bit unless the growth
Mm,
continues as we've seen over the last 30 years with the internet. And it could. I mean, AI and bio, and we could continue to see an explosion of growth so that the returns can be there. And that's hopefully what will happen. But the job of the venture capitalist will certainly change because what does AI do? It does what I do. It reads, it analyzes, and it ranks. And I look at, let's say, 15,000 companies a year and we'll invest in 25. All we've done is rank them.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
These are the top 25 we saw. So AIs do that pretty well. Like they give you a pretty good grade. Now, for the next 5 to 10 years, they might only say of the 15,000 you're looking at, here are the top, 500, and they won't be able to get further than that, or they might miss a few, but they'll still be able to construct a pretty good portfolio. And that's really
Right.
what I'm doing is I'm constructing a portfolio. So, I've told my team, try to replace me with software. Let's see how fast we can replace me.
I see. Yeah,
But I've had a lot of success, so I have much less fear than other people about how their jobs would change or what comes next.
yeah,
But I think everyone needs, including me, including everybody, needs to be aware that this is going to change a politician's job. This is going to
yeah,
change a doctor's job and a nurse's job.
yeah. Do you ever think about how society would change basically in 20 years' time? Like, are we talking about more UBI sort of approach, or do you think that yeah, there's going to be more jobs created as a result of this? Where do you lie on that debate of job losses versus job creation, and yeah, how kind of society looks like? Do you ever think about it?
My logic tells me that we're going to have a cataclysm
Okay,
and
wow.
we need UBI because 80% of us will be unemployable. Read of history, however, is that this has been discussed for 170 years. And every 20 years, it's very clear that we're about to have a cataclysm where nobody's employable anymore. And every decade, we somehow muddle through and we're still at 4% unemployment in the US. So I don't think it's wise to bet against capitalism and against the discovery and creation of human needs and wants
Mm,
and
mm,
love that they're going to be willing to pay for. I don't think it's good to bet against what needs and wants and loves agents might have. What my digital twin wants.
yeah.
You know, there's so many things for us still to do as we expand our intelligence, around the globe and into space, that I can't bet against it. So my guess is that 20 years from now, we will still have 4% unemployment. It'll be that things will have changed a lot, and they will be in a constant state of change. And so what's going to be challenging is for those personality types who don't like change, it will be a much more cruel world. And for those people who love change, it will be a more delightful world. And we are going to have to try to help people who don't like change to embrace change and see the reality that it's okay. You're going to be fine, but it's
Yeah.
hard. It's emotional. And again, logically, you think, all the jobs are going away. What are we going to do? But it's not.
Yeah. It is like a spectrum, and the shift has been coming so far where, see like our grandfathers, they would study a certain thing and be in one company for the rest of their life, basically. Now, obviously, it's like studying something else and you're doing something else, changing careers changing companies every 1 month, maybe even changing careers every 2-3 years, basically going from this to that and the other things. Definitely there's more ebb and flow, let's put it that way, in your career and in your jobs, right, than what it was, a few decades ago. So
And we've gotten used to it.
yeah, I've gotten
So,
pretty used to it.
we went from movies to TV shows for 30 minutes. Then we went to YouTube videos, and now we're down to shorts. They're like 30 to 60 seconds. And the same thing's going to happen with our working lives. We're just going to get used to more and more short stints and plugging in and unplugging and contributing and not contributing. I mean, look at what you're doing. Like, this wasn't a job 10 years ago. I don't know if it's a job for you or not, but it's there wasn't this job 10 years ago, and you're having fun doing it. So
yeah. No, 100%.
more of that continues to happen.
More of that. I wanted to ask, so, I mean, I watched some of your kind of videos, and you were talking about the love for the product, and how product is really important in terms of growth tactics, basically. I think you were mentioning how so much time you just spend time on actually the first experience of the product, right? And how the product feels like, and so on and so forth. So in the age of AI, obviously, like, you can ship something much faster, using all these tools, and even like low code, no code stuff, the replets, the lovables, and so on and so forth, right? I was wondering, like, how do you draw the line here between speed and product quality, when it comes to iteration, and growth, basically? Like, how do you think about that, basically?
Yeah, I mean, basically the answer is it's speed to product quality, and product quality means value. So what happens mostly is people spend a lot of time building features that nobody wants and nobody uses, or they start businesses nobody wants and nobody uses. So what you're looking for is speed toward a positive outcome. And what that typically means is the willingness and the acceptance of being wrong most of the time. And because many of us have been good at school and then we're good at our first jobs, we're not used to being wrong. We're not comfortable with being wrong. We want to get the right answer. And you have to get rid of that and just say, I want to get toward the thing that works. And it's not about me. It's about the product, and get it out of it. Get your ego out of it. Like, oh, people are going to judge me by my product. And then my girlfriend from grade is going to see it. And so there's all these emotional and fearful things that keep us from going 10 times faster than we do. And once you learn the methods and the mental models for going faster, you can go massively faster. But I'm not saying go faster toward crap. I'm saying faster to quality, faster to what works. Quality is what's valuable.
I see. So more iteration, basically, then. Yeah, potentially. So in terms of like growth tactics, right? And product growth. So I think you a long time ago talked about viral channels, this concept of viral channels and growth, right? And I think you cited the example back then of Airbnb using Craigslist, right, to get the word out, and then really create that kind of viral channel for that. So currently in 2025, with all AI that's happening and stuff, what are the sort of viral channels, would you say, right now for product growth? Has it changed any significantly, or?
Yeah. Again, we've got a chart showing the rise and fall of different viral channels.
Okay.
They don't come and exist. They come in for a certain amount of time and then they go away. Once Airbnb did that to Craigslist, Craigslist found out they were doing it
They shut it down. Yeah.
and they shut them down. And then they
Yeah.
built software to shut other people down from doing it on Craigslist. So Craigslist became, it died as a viral channel. You're essentially looking for places where people are spending their attention, where you can, for free, get in there and get their attention and then bring them over to your product. And that was a lot easier to do between 94 and 2010 than it is now. So the viral channels have been shut down by the owners of those viral channels who put tolls on them so they'd make revenue out of it. Makes total sense. I would do that too if I were that. So we have to constantly find new places people are spending their attention. So where do you go today? You've got to figure out something around Reddit or around Discord servers or around Facebook groups or around social, so TikTok videos, influencers, podcasts. There aren't a lot of channels that are regularly easy to get viral with anymore. Most of the recent successes have been around influencers and around SMSs.
And are you saying so, according to the historical data that you mentioned, these are also have a short transitory epoch of time until closes and something else comes back?
That's right.
Let's say podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I get an SMS from you saying, "Hey, I've just used this app. I want you to connect with me on this app." The first 2 or 3 times I see that, I click, I download it, I have the experience. The fourth time, I'm like, I'll get to that later. And the fifth time, I'm like, good Lord, I can't believe Wahid is sending me this crap.
Yeah.
So the node at the end of the reception starts to get less effective for you as a product designer. And Apple starts saying, I don't want you sending those things on SMS. I'm going to block you.
That makes sense, really. That's an art, a work of creativity, I guess, to keep finding these new viral channels, right? To uniquely position yourself and your growth tactics, right?
The growth tactics are ever evolving, daily, weekly, monthly.
Okay, that's really interesting.
What I call it is the shrew. So the reason the shrew survives, so the shrew is the ancestor to all humans and all mammals. Okay. And the shrew lived in these little holes underneath the the feet of the dinosaurs. And when the asteroid hit and it killed all the dinosaurs, the shrews lived. Mm-hmm. And they lived because their adaptation was that they were in constant motion.
Interesting. Okay.
They were generating their own heat. They were constantly moving even when sleeping. They were constantly eating, whereas dinosaurs might eat once and then 3 days later eat again. Reptiles sit in the sun. So they all mostly died, and then the shrews, and then we are the descendants of the shrews. So in growth, you have to be a shrew in constant motion.
I see. Constant experimentation, constantly trying new things, and just keep moving, right? I'm a big fan of old Steve Jobs kind of interviews and videos, And one of the things Jobs talks about was back then, and this was like, the 80s, basically, he's talking about interviews where we live in a very noisy world, right? And the challenge is always like, how do you differentiate yourself and create a product and scale it up in this very kind of noisy world? And 3 decades in or 4 decades from then, I would say it's gotten more exponentially noisier, right? If not exponentially more distracting, and so on and so forth. What advice would you give founders when it comes to uniquely kind of creating and scaling a product in this incredibly more noisy world than what Steve left us, basically 3 decades ago?
Yeah, it's tough. One of the you have to look at the technology windows. And there's an article on the website called Technology Windows. And it's a must read, I think, for anybody in the technology space. And it also, I think, helps explain a lot of what happens in civilizations. Why did we have trenches and no movement in World War I? Well, it's because of the Gatling gun and mustard gas. Like it was a function of the technology of the time. And then, 20 years later, 25 years later, when we did World War II, the whole war looked totally different because airplanes had evolved and tanks had evolved. And so that war looked that way because of the wars. And now that we have drones, wars will look completely different. And so if you want to stand out and you want to compete, you have to look at the technology of the time and understand which technology window you're in, because the technology will do most of the heavy lifting for you. Mm-hmm. If you can do an agent and other people don't have the agent yet, the value I get from that agent is 10x what I had before. It'll create noise by itself just because it's 10x better.
Hmm.
So that's the first thing, is make sure you understand where you are on the technology window. A lot of people, eh, most interesting and big companies don't come from marketing innovations. They come from technology innovations. So we have a lot of people doing power bars and yoga pants and protein drink, right? And they are all trying marketing innovations. That's fine. And you can build a business doing that. But that's not where big companies come from. Big companies jump into a technology window at the right moment and ride that technology and the benefit that technology brings to people as 90% of the goodness of what you're doing. And then you add that extra 10% in terms of the branding or whatever. So that's the first thing I would say, is be aware of these technology windows and where you sit in them.
And just on that, then, before we move on to the next one, we're in April 2025. What technology windows are open according to you?
It's almost everybody's just doing AI. I mean,
Okay.
robotics
AI.
is now an open window because AI makes it so. Right? I
Yeah.
mean, you look at what's happening in SaaS software, consumer software. You look at what's happening in space. It's like everything's related to AI these days.
Okay.
The
So AI
challenge is
is one.
everybody knows that. And so it's
Yes.
super competitive. The
Yes.
benefit is that there's massive value to be added to new customers with new products. And then
Yeah.
the other thing is you just can't play it safe. Everybody's like worried about their image or worried about.
Mm.
There's this little talk on YouTube called Hit It Hard. So if you type in Hit It Hard on YouTube, James Currier, it's a quick 3-minute talk I gave, or 4-minute talk I gave in 2007. And in it, I described the fact that whatever you're doing as an entrepreneur, you have to hit it hard. If you have a chance to raise money, raise the most money you can. If you are going to come up with a catchy slogan, make it freaking catchy. If
Mm.
you are going to, you know, you know, do a deal for a channel to get distribution, make sure that you're an exclusive. Hit everything really hard and don't half-ass stuff, because you get anywhere as an entrepreneur, particularly in this world that's so noisy.
Yeah. 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 No, I
And
totally.
people are too timid. People are too cautious. Like, oh, we'll make it yellow, but I don't want to make it that yellow.
I see. Yeah.
We'll call it, MailChimp, but let's not use the face of a chimp in the logo. That's just too kiddie. No, use a little face of a, go all the way.
See, I see. So are you saying like go make it a bit more mentally jarring, basically visually jarring, or yeah, so that yeah,
But
it's just
that's a marketing innovation, which is fine, but that's not
yes.
where you're going to get your real.
Mm.
Everyone thinks of standing out being, what do I say or how do I look? But that's not it. And the reason that is because in most of our environments, we don't have technology wins. So when you're in school, you're doing the same assignment everyone else is. So you have to have a marketing innovation to get the A plus. When you're at a bar trying to pick up a guy or a girl, it's just human beings. That's the technologies. So we're talking about marketing innovations. I'm going to wear a hat, or I'm going to, do a magic trick at the bar or whatever. These are marketing innovations. These are not fundamental value innovations.
Yeah, that makes sense, really. So, in terms of technology windows, one of the other things that's interestingly happening apart from AI is Web3 and crypto, right? And I know you guys have been involved for a while, but it seems like, I mean, with the political headwinds that are going with this administration, they have like yeah, and cryptos are and everything else related to that. It seems like crypto is going to be a big part of this administration. So do you think that's a technology window where you're going to see a lot more innovation and companies coming to the forefront with some of the stablecoin stuff and that's happening? Or do you think like, yeah, well, what's your feel about Web3 and crypto in general right now, basically?
I think reinventing the financial system is a must. It's going to happen. It's happening. And, we've been investing in it since 2010, and we are going to continue to invest in it. That's a great area. There's big leaps still to be made in that area. Obviously, it's not great right now. It's not usable. It's not understandable. It's not widely used worldwide. So yeah, there's a lot more to be done there.
Okay, cool. Makes sense, really. But nothing, any specific that you're looking into or any?
No,
Yeah.
just we're looking at a lot of things. I think the main thing I would say is that if you get into crypto because you want to make a lot of money, then you will fail. You have to get into
Interesting.
crypto because you love the technology, you love the mission, you love the product.
Yeah.
And we've had a real hard time. The problem is that with crypto, because people have made money for doing nothing so fast, it's drawn in a lot of people who are just get rich quick people. And
Yeah.
so getting both a great management team that cares about the product and a great idea, it's very
Yeah.
hard. crypto.
But isn't that like the capitalism itself, like where there needs to be like a profit incentive?
There needs to be enough of a profit incentive, but you're great. You're great. Zuckerberg was not motivated by money.
Mm, yeah,
Larry
that's fair.
Ellison is not motivated by money. Larry and Sergey are not motivated by money. This is the big cultural thing, that mindset, transfer function stuff I was talking about, that's so different about Silicon Valley. People here are motivated by graffiti. They want to write their name on the wall of history. And people in other environments think, oh, I'm going to do this to make money. I've got revenue coming in. I'm Jasper. I've got a lot of revenue coming in. I'm good. I'm doing the thing. I'm building a business. A business is about money. I'm going to make money. This is the wrong mindset. This is the wrong mindset. And, we had only hobbyists working on technology before 1995.
Mm,
And then after the crash of 2000, again, we went back to hobbyists. And we didn't see carpetbaggers. We didn't see, people who are in it for the money coming until sort of 2008, 9, 10. And enough when Google went public, and then the Social Network came out, the movie came out in 2010. And since then, we've been inundated with people who are doing these things to make money, and they're motivated by money, and nothing interesting gets built.
yeah, and this is where exactly like if a trend becomes so popular, it starts attracting people. Oh, like you talked about like the going from a couple of hundred to 32,000 capital deployers, right? Pretty sure not everybody there is motivated by the craft, but love the craft, right? But rather, it is like the new investment banking or the new kind of consulting career is just become a VC.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
That's right. The
so
same thing is true of the VCs. What's interesting about it, though, is that if you get to investment banking, you can make $1 million, $2 million, $3 million in your first few years if you do it right. And with hedge funds, you can do the same. But with VC, you cannot. With VC, you often don't start getting carry for 10 years, if ever. And so all these people have been deceived into coming into the industry to make a ton of money. It takes 15 years, 20 years.
yeah. What motivates you, James? This is a personal question, but you talked about obviously money as not a great motivation. What sort of motivates you to do what you do every day?
There are two things. One is graffiti. I'd like to write my name
Oh,
on parts of the world. I mean,
okay.
I think that's the most beautiful motivation. I think if you go to Burning Man and they build it up, and then the next year it gets torn down. They're just doing it for ego, just for fun, just for creativity. So I'm motivated by graffiti and by creativity, just the act of creating. That's what I'm motivated by. And when I first earned a lot of money, I just used it to create more. I literally spent my post-tax dollars just to pay people salaries to go build stuff with me.
Mm, yeah.
That's all I wanted to do. I don't want to buy a fancy car. I don't want to buy a fancy house. I don't need a fancy watch, fancy haircut. What is that all about? That's a distraction from the act of creativity. And why am I wealthy? I'm wealthy because I care about creativity. I don't care about what.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want to basically spread around your graffiti, and that sort of outlives you as a thing. Is that
Yeah.
some motivation? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, and most of the people I know in the Bay Area who have been really successful are just like that. And we've all moved here from all over the country and all over the world because that's the ethos here. And that's why Silicon Valley continues to produce 85% of all the returns in tech.
Yeah. Yeah. That's quite beautiful. Brilliant. One last question I have, James, before I let you go. So, a lot of the listeners of the podcast are actually quite young people. They're basically in their teens, late teens, or even like early college and so on and so forth, right? We live in a very different world today. And it seems like, I mean, you've got this whole picture because you've built companies, you've sold companies, you've invested in companies, and you've basically talked to a lot of people around the world. And the world just seems very, very different today, especially after COVID and what's happening. What kind of advice would you have for young people who are in studies right now, or like, just going through life? What should they spend most of their time on? How should they prepare for careers? Or like what sort of parting advice would you have for folks given your life experiences?
Yeah. I continue to believe that STEM is the way you should spend your time if you can.
Okay.
And then on deep personal understanding of yourself. So courses like Landmark Forum, courses like Hoffman Institute, Joe Hudson's courses, any seminar you can, like if you go to Harvard Business School, the most important course there is LEAD, which is basically interpersonal relations. If you go to Stanford Business School and you ask the people there, what's the best course they took? Interpersonal relations. It's called touchy-feely.
Mm-hmm.
So studying STEM and also studying yourself and understanding how your mind works and regulating yourself and regulating your emotions, those are going to be useful for your entire career. And they'll be helpful in your marriage and helpful with your friends and helpful with your parents and your kids.
Yeah.
And so time spent on those two things, I think, are where you get the highest returns. And, the AI is going to replace most of what we all do. And so it's going to be our ability to adapt. And our ability to adapt is going to be based on some fundamental understandings, which we typically get from STEM, and our understandings of ourselves and regulating that and moving ourselves through these changes.
Yeah.
So that's where I would put people.
Yeah, that's sound advice. One of someone I was talking to basically mentioned this, and it really resonated with me. Was that AI can do a lot of this stuff basically, but what would lack still is basically understanding it for yourself and taste. Taste is something that is unique, right? And to your point about graffiti around the world, right, and creativity, that's something you deeply can do just by understanding yourself, right, and generating the taste of what to do, and then your AI agents can basically just crack on and do everything. Yeah, exactly, manifest that. Yeah. Beautiful. And with that beautiful note, I'll let you go, James. It's been a lovely discussion. We covered a lot, all around civilization, but also very specific on company building. What a pleasure to have a discussion with you.
Oh, well, thanks, Wahid. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much.